Good morning, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to another bookish breakfast. There's actually a bookish breakfast this week because I actually finished some books. It's kind of like one of those it never rains but it pours situations, because I finished 5 books recently after a while of not really finishing any. So I'm just going to quickly run through all of those for you. So the first 2 books that I finished were books on WattPad, which I talked about in my last bookish breakfast. It's an app that people can write stories on, so anyone can write a story on WattPad, and then other people can read the stories and they can comment on every line, so you can have kind of, I guess, relatively nice conversations, normally quite simplistic conversations about specific lines or specific theories of what's going to happen, or you can also give, I guess, feedback to authors based on specific lines. And yeah, it's an open app and it's very popular and well known, but I had never heard of it until recently. So last time I talked about my struggles finding books that I enjoyed on it. I would say I've started probably upwards of 50 books on Wattpad and read the first few chapters at least. A lot of them aren't finished because obviously they're works in progress. You post 1 chapter at a time. I'm very new to this whole online writing thing. I don't know if you know, if you can tell. So a lot of those aren't finished, so I wouldn't talk about them until they are finished, if they ever get finished, because obviously that's the thing. They're mostly new authors who are doing this completely voluntarily, and I think a lot of people would kind of drop out over time. And then a lot of them were just so frustrating for multiple reasons for me, and part of that is not being used to the conventions of online writing, and part of that is not really being into the genres and styles that maybe appeal more to the typical Wattpad reader. So a lot of the books I started were so frustrating that I have given up on them. But I finished 2, which is nice because it means that I'm reading in time when I wouldn't otherwise necessarily be reading when I just have my phone and nothing else to read with. So the 2 books that I finished were The Trouble with Kissing Connor by Jo Watson. That is, as you can possibly tell from the name, a kind of YA romantic comedy chick lit type thing. Wattpad was really, really pushing it, and for some reason I'd read it because I was like, they're pushing it so hard, I'm just going to read it so that they stop advertising it. Now they're just really, really advertising for me to read the other books by the same author that I don't really want to do. Yeah, it's a romantic comedy set in a high school. It had amusing moments, some interesting aspects to the plot, but a lot of it was sort of treading a path that has been trodden before. But that's fine. It was still enjoyable. And the other one was Mind the Gap it was a collaboration between Evelyn Hale and Raina Salt. And that was actually fairly original. I quite enjoyed that one. So it's about 2 commuters who normally sit in specific chairs on their subway trains. I think they're subway trains in New York. And when the trains stop at a certain station, their seats are lined up, and every time they do this commute, or quite frequently when they do this commute, if they manage to get into the right seats, they have like a minute opposite one another, able to see one another, without knowing anything about each other apart from what they can see in the trains. And I quite like the way that the authors showed how they would get to know one another just based on a minute of time every few days looking at each other. It's a little bit of a weird idea, but it did work in practice. And how they think about, and also the things that are going on in the rest of their lives, and how they think about and relate to this person who's on the other side of the train tracks. And the story stops when they actually physically meet in person for the first time. So yeah, I quite enjoyed that one. I thought it was a little bit innovative. It was very endearing. It was quite a sweet book. For both of those books, I would say the writing is not like conventional writing, and I feel like I'm going on about this in what I've said so far even, but it's just something that I need to get used to. I think the writing is very simplistic. It doesn't feel very polished. Even these 2 books have both been up for quite a long time, and they have both been through multiple rounds of editing, it looks like, but even with that being the case, then you still find typos, you still find sentences that are just grammatically problematic, because these books have never had a formal editor, and they've never really received probably any formal writing advice and feedback the way that an agent might do, because I think if somebody's feeding back as a comment, the author can very easily either ignore it or only take on board the positives, or people even apparently delete comments that are negative feedback. Like, it's not like I'm not going around giving loads of negative feedback, but I'm just kind of illustrating the fact that there is no there's no kind of quality control process to this. That said, some of the published books I've read recently haven't had an amazing quality, so you know. Yeah. Anyway, so that was those two books. I would have to just mention that Mind the Gap was a winner in the Open Novella contest. I think it's called the ONC, which is apparently quite a big thing on WattPad, and it was recommended to me by Samantha Luna, who was a commenter. She said if you check out the Open Novella contest, you might be able to find some slightly better books based on that, because writers bring their best works to that, which I would have to say worked out in the case of Mind the Gap. I think that was a winner in 2020. So, moving on to physical books that I finished. I finished the first book of the Mistborn trilogy, but the first book is called The Final Empire. This is the second book because I left the first book in the car. So I have been reading this aloud to my husband on drives to and from work, because he's driving me to work at the moment. So we've got like half an hour drive twice a day, just to kind of like fill the time and just have something enjoy. We always read books aloud often, and it's just like a nice shared thing, and when it's like first thing in the morning and there's not really a lot to say, it's just a nice way of, then you can just chat about the book, so it's good. For those of you who read high fantasy, Brandon Sanderson needs no introduction, but this series is a very hard magic system. It's probably one of the best hard magic systems, definitely that I've ever read, but maybe I've read more soft magic systems, I don't know. And it's based on the powers, on people drawing power from metal in several different ways over the course of the series. The first one focuses on this idea of allomancy, so somebody swallows a metal and then they can burn that metal, and then they get attributes associated with that metal, and it turns them basically into superheroes, called Mistborn. And yeah, it's good. I'd say as a fantasy book, it really it brings it all, basically. It's got conflict, sometimes a little bit much of the blow-by-blow account of conflicts, because he's really keen on telling you exactly how all of these allomantic metals work. So if they're having a conflict, he'll be sure to tell you every single metal that they use. So every single move that they make, it's like, she burns steel in order to do this, she burned pewter in order to do that, and sometimes it's like, yeah, okay, get on with it. Then there is also a tiny bit of romance, but a little bit of kind of glamour and fun, because she goes to these balls and parties. There's intrigue and suspense, and there's also like character development, and some kind of reflections on politics and religion, to the extent that you would, like, when I say reflections on politics and religion, to the extent that is manageable and approachable and accessible within a fantasy book. So I would really strongly recommend that if you're looking for fantasy and you somehow haven't heard of the Mistborn series, and we'll definitely be starting on the second one. For saying it's a book that we've read aloud to one another, normally, like, we recently read The Hunger Games aloud. That's a very short series, and it took us over a year because it was so bad for reading aloud. It's really good for, I can read the books in about a day, and I find them really gripping in that sense, but reading it aloud, it forces it to slow down, and it really shows up a lot of flaws. Reading aloud shows the flaws in a work a lot more. Brandon Sanderson has a really annoying habit of repeating the same words, so you'll be saying, say for instance, she walked inside, da-da-da-da-da, something else happened inside, da-da-da-da-da, something else happened inside. And it's like, you only need to say the word inside once, Brandon. It's okay. I know that they're inside now. He does that quite a lot, but the writing is still overall a little bit better than Suzanne Collins' writing in The Hunger Games. The plot and story is less full of holes and difficulties than Harry Potter, which again, for the later books, that just took us longer and longer and longer to read. So yeah, it was a good read aloud. Not perfect read aloud, but quite a good read aloud. And yeah, we read it in about a month, just over a month, I think. So for a book that is this size, that's doing pretty well for reading aloud. The other book that I finished was The Khan by Saima Mir. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I have already spoken about it for several videos. I bought this book brand new from Waterstones via online. I even had it signed by the author. I was really super excited by the premise. It's set in a town very near to where I live. It talks about sort of like rival mafia gangs. The things I really liked about this book is that it has got a very confident but complex British Asian heroine who is very who has a very good way of shining light onto sort of aspects of discrimination that she has faced and that it continues to be faced by various members of her community. I like the way that she reflected on like some of the younger children of the book. At one point there's a 5-year-old girl who comes back and tells her father something that she doesn't understand, but it's evident that even this girl at age 5 is starting to experience sort of racism and Islamophobia within her school environment. So I like the way that was examined. I think it's something that we don't talk about probably enough. Or maybe we talk about it, but there is not enough action and it's not enough change. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed as well that she was very complex. So it wasn't that's not all of her character. She's got aspects of being a mother. She's got aspects of the career that she wants to pursue versus the career that she kind of ends up being pushed into in this kind of crime syndicate thing. So that was quite good. I did like the presentation of British Pakistani culture in terms of weddings, funerals, ways that people like family ties and things that are more distinctive to that kind of British Pakistani culture. So I enjoyed kind of seeing that and learning more about that myself. What else was I going to say along those lines? I enjoyed that I believe the author is a Muslim woman. I enjoyed that the characters were Muslims and they brought their faith into what they were doing. Like, though I had it's rare in a book that you really, oh, my alarm's going off, whoops. It's rare in a book that you really believe that characters have religions and interpretations of their religions that are consistent and fit in with the world of the book, and Saima Mir achieved that in that you could see that different characters had different interpretations of aspects of their religion, I suppose. So those are all the things I liked about it. I found it a very slow read. I thought it was going to be a fast read because I thought it was going to be gripping. For some reason it didn't grip for me, and I found the pacing and the structure a little bit difficult, but that might just be me. But I just didn't get as much out of this book as I was hoping to. So I'll put that one down. Then the final book that I finished was my poetry book for April, which was Jo Shapcott of Mutability. I say for April, I'm reading 1 poem a day, so I think the next one that I've started has got 40 poems, so it's going to take me until sometime in June, but I'm reading a poem every day and I'm enjoying it. I found Of Mutability, I bought this because I really love Jo Shapcott's poem Night Flight from Muncaster, which is included in this collection. I'd still say it's probably one of my favourite from this collection. And I was really excited to see what else she'd written, and I kind of expected it all to be as good and as interesting as Night Flight from Muncaster. But I think a lot of these poems, sorry, my mouth's getting really dry. It's probably because I'm going on for too long about books. A lot of these poems kind of followed a very similar pattern when they started out with a kind of image in the real world, and then they kind of metamorphed into something a bit more unusual and weird, so like frost turns into glass and things like that, and I didn't find that was very effective for me as a reader. Then towards the end things become more realistic, and she writes quite a few quite nice poems that are more focused on nature and meanings behind nature, I suppose. So there were enjoyable poems in this, but I thought that the overall I'm not going to assess the quality of the poems because I don't think that I probably read them with as much attention and depth as they deserved, but my enjoyment of the poems was a little bit lower than I expected. This is just a theme for my reading month. I just wanted to quickly read a poem to you, if you don't mind. I think it's the best and the most moving poem of the collection, and it's called Somewhat Unravelled. It's quite short. Auntie stands by the kettle, looking at the kettle, and says, help me, where is the kettle? I say, little auntie, the curlicues and hopscotch grids unfurling in your brain have hidden it from you. Let me make you a cup of tea. She says, aha, but I do my crossword, don't I? Okay, not the difficult one, the one with the what's name, cryptic clues, not that. I say, auntie, little auntie, we were never cryptic. Let's not start now. I appreciate your straight-on talk, the built-up toilet seats, the way you wish poetry were just my hobby, our cruises on the stair lift, your concern about my weight, the special seat in the bath. We know where we are. She says, the nurse told me I should furniture walk around the house, holding on to it. I say, little auntie, you are a plump armchair in flight, a kitchen table on a difficult hike without boots. You do the sideboard crawl like no one else. You are a sofa Roomba. You go to sleep like a rug. She says, I don't like eating. Just as well you've got a good appetite. I say, littlest auntie, my very little auntie, because she is shrinking now in front of me. Let me cook for you, a meal so wholesome and blimmin' pungent with garlic you will dance on it and eat it through your feet. Then she says, don't you ever want to go to market and get lost in pots, fruit and random fabric? Don't you want to experiment with rain, hide out in storms, cover your body with a layer only one raindrop thick? Don't you want to sell your nail clippings online? She says, look at you, with all your language, you never became the flower your mother wanted, but it's not too late. Come with me and rootle in the earth outside my front window. Set yourself in the special bed. The one only what's name is allowed to garden, and we will practice opening and closing, and we'll follow the sun with our faces until the cows come home. Yeah, I found that as an exploration of sort of age and illness and the way that family relationships change in response to age and illness, but some aspects of character and family love and like some things stay the same, but some things are impacted by that. Yeah, I enjoyed that as a poem. So finally, the book that I didn't finish that I was supposed to finish was Njal Saga. I'm going to still be reading this. This was for Saga Long 2021. I'm a bad co-host. This is why I never get involved in any proper read-alongs. I've still got probably nearly half of it to read. So yeah, I'm just going to keep chipping away at that. When I eventually do finish it, I'll make a video talking about it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this very eclectic mix of books, I suppose, that we've had today. We've gone from WattPad, which is really down to the minute still being edited, to a saga from, you know, medieval period. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care.